Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our session this evening on country action groups on mental health initiatives. And we're so pleased to see such a good turnout this evening. We're very excited to share some information with everybody who's here. So as I said before, we're here to talk about country action groups on mental health initiatives and how to get one of those started. And we are going to be doing that with the assistance of both Bonnie Black, who is the founding chair, the Rotary Action Group on Mental Health Initiatives, and Sean Paddy, who is the chair of the Charter Country Action Group on Mental Health Initiatives here in District 7030. So country action groups are a new initiative, very newly established, and Sean has the distinguishing feature of being basically the founding president of the first ever country action group. So they have a wealth of knowledge to share with us this evening. And the way that we're going to go through this is first to learn about what Rotary Action Groups are. Some people may not be familiar with what a Rotary Action Group or a RAG is. So what is a Rotary Action Group and what is the Rotary Action Group on Mental Health Initiatives? And Bonnie will be helping us understand that. And what are country action groups on mental health initiatives? So that particular iteration of a RAG on MHI, are we calling them CAGs on MHI? Sounds like an unfortunate acronym, but a country action group on mental health initiatives, what that would look like. And then, of course, the particular journey of the country action group on mental health initiatives, the country chapter for Trinidad and Tobago, where Sean will share with us what the process was towards starting that chapter and hopefully giving us something of a roadmap to what starting a country action group looks like and some of the things to be thinking about if you are considering starting one in your country. And then we'll wrap up with the steps around that for your country. If you've got things that are different from what's going on in Trinidad and Tobago, this is going to be an opportunity for us to talk through the peculiarities of our different countries and move into questions and answers for anybody who is interested in this, passionate about mental health advocacy, and has been looking for ways to get involved. So, as I said before, our presenters are PDG Bonnie Black, who is the founding chair of the Rotary Action Group on Mental Health Initiatives. And by way of a more detailed introduction, Bonnie has been a Rotarian since 1989, rising to the position of district governor for 2013-14. And she's the founding chair of the Rotary Action Group on Mental Health Initiatives, and this began in 2016. And she served in that position through 2022. And now serves as treasurer, as well as the partnerships director and regional representative for chapters in all of the Americas. She's retired from a career in mental health and now spends her time training evidence-based suicide prevention and intervention throughout the Northeastern US. Everybody give a warm welcome to Bonnie in the chat. We're so grateful for her time this evening. And our second presenter is Sean Paddy. So he's the founding chair of the Country Action Group on Mental Health Initiatives for Trinidad and Tobago. And Sean has been a Rotarian since 2010 and is an avid advocate for youth training and development and is committed to supporting and enhancing youth services in Rotary. He has held a wide array of appointments within District 7030, including Communications Officer, Public Image Chair, and Polio Plus Chair. Sean currently serves as the Assistant Regional Public Image Coordinator in Zone 34, and he will be in that position from 2021, was from 2021 through to 2025. And give a warm welcome to Sean, please. We're so grateful for both of them being here this evening. So without further ado, I'm going to hand the floor over to PDG Bonnie for her to help us understand what Rotary Action Groups on Mental Health Initiatives are and their impact. So Bonnie, sorry about that. I'm just going to stop sharing here and let you go ahead and take it away.
Sure. Thank you very much. And I'm so pleased that so many of you are here with us this evening, and very excited to see the Rotaractors online with us because that is, I joined in '89. That's as soon as I could join Rotary. And this is the way Rotary will continue to grow. And it's also through Rotary Action Groups. There are 25 Rotary Action Groups in the world. And it's a group of people who want to take action for a certain cause. And we have to follow the RI Board of Directors um, rules, basically, for us. There are different things we must do every year. And it gets passed down to what are now being called district chapters. Now, that's nice if someone is sitting in Evanston, Illinois, making that decision. The reality of our Rotary world in mental health is that it's not the same as a Rotary Action Group on microfinancing or a Rotary Action Group on basic education and literacy. When we talk about mental health, a lot of people don't. There is heavy stigma around mental health challenges, and mental illness. And it's all very culturally based. So in any district, especially one like yours or one like mine, that's also an international district, we must be sensitive to what is the culture or cultures regarding mental health. Um, in my district, we have Montreal in Quebec. And I remember speaking about mental health years ago to some people in Montreal, and I became highly aware of the various cultures in that urban city because there are people living there who are not French Canadian. They may speak French for business now, but they are not Canadian in their culture. In their section of the city, it is their country of origin culture. So mental health, even 1 hour up the road from me, is very different than mental health where I live an hour south of Montreal. And we know this, for instance, in your district too. And that's how Sean and I began our discussion. What are we going to do when a district has multiple cultures with multiple thoughts about mental well-being? So we actually took board action. Our Rotary Action Group on Mental Health Initiatives took board action to change what was handed down from RI to us and say, for our action group, we will develop both district chapters as well as country chapters. And yes, we had to get permission from RI Board of Trustees to do that. And they were like, oh, we should have thought of that. So we were the first action group, thanks to your district and Sean, to actually create that, remove some of those blinders and create the awareness that we must be culturally sensitive even within Rotary districts themselves. So the concept of having chapters, whether they're district-wide or countrywide, is to help Rotarians, Rotaractors, friends, professionals in mental health to take action, to get projects going, to get conversations happening about mental health, and using as much evidence-based information as possible and accepted in that geographic region. So I hope that gives you an overview as to what action groups are. After all, in theory, we are all people of action, but a Rotary Action Group has a targeted focus. Okay, so that's why it's different than a Rotary Fellowship, where you might meet people once a year at an international convention. You all collect stamps, or you all go sailing, or you all like to do clowning. I mean, there are Rotary fellowships for any hobby that you have. But action groups really are targeted service action groups for Rotary members. Does that cover generally, Alyssa, what you hoped I would cover?
Yes, I think so. Because when we started talking about country action groups, when it was introduced, I realized that I didn't actually know much about Rotary action groups. So it was new information for me from that standpoint. I was wondering if you could talk a bit about composition, because one of the things that was surprising and exciting to me about Rotary action groups is that they don't just consist of Rotarians.
Oh, no, 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 no. Which is different than the fellowships or different from your clubs. Rotary action groups welcome anyone into them. And many of the action groups actually have professionals or retirees in that specific focus area who want to keep engaged but aren't quite sure they want to do the Rotary thing. So it's also a great way to prospect members of your Rotaract or your Rotary Club in getting them engaged where their passion may be, and then see how in the Rotary world it's actually taking place. And if you choose to become a country chapter, in the bylaws, which we supply because Rotary has standard paperwork for everything, in case you haven't found that out yet, there's standard paperwork for everything in Rotary. It specifically says that your members can be Rotarians, Rotaractors, professionals in your area, or members of the general community. What we have found in mental health is that many of our chapters have peers as part of their board or as members of their chapter, because we learn so much from people who have lived experience.
Yes, thank you so much for that, Bonnie. And I think it's one of one of the aspects of Rotary Action Groups that really offers a lot of opportunity, particularly in places where there maybe hasn't been much in the way of mental health advocacy before. It may be nice to have the existing both brand and presence of Rotary backing that action and being a way to channel the interests of people who've wanted to maybe get involved in mental health advocacy and have been wondering, how do I do that? So one of the things that I do know about the Rotary Action Group on mental health initiatives is that it does have an online presence, and there are materials that were painstakingly prepared for chapters to eventually benefit from. I was wondering if you could tell us more about those.
Sure. May I show you?
Sure.
Okay. I'm going to take you all to our website, and the website is ragonmentalhealth.org. So you see, whoops, you can see right up in the URL, it's ragonmentalhealth.org. And when you're at the home page, this is what you see. Just need to move this so I can see it. When you sign in, we have lots of things that you can explore, but what I'd like to explore This is the home page, and it can direct you to different places. We actually have 3 target areas, and this was actually a result of our conversations with immediate past Rotary President Gordon McAnally, because he said, let's really bring it down to 3 directives, which is break stigma. We've got to break stigma first. We can't talk about something nobody wants to talk about. Then we need to raise awareness. So once we begin to break the stigma, how do we put veritable information in front of people? And then the third goal, ongoing, is to increase access for everyone and capacity within ourselves to be mentally well as capacity in your community for delivering services. So it's both personal and community. So when we look at in English, you can go to toolkits and then just click here. I'll show you what that looks like. And we have our 3 basic areas. I'll be going to the French in a minute. And here we have 8 of our current tested veritable toolkits. These are toolkits that you can take and use once you're a country action group on your own. It's how to get some projects off the ground right away. Now for French, you're going to come to resources where it says translated resources. And when you go there, Rotary Translation Department has done the 8 languages that Rotary officially speaks in, and then you would just click en français, et voilà, tous les key. Okay, so there they are in French. So, and as you can see, we have lots of other languages too that are the major, the approved or whatever we want to call it in Rotary, the resources by language. So that makes it pretty easy. And then when you become a chapter and you set up your chapter page, we give you that page. I'm just going to pick one. You put up your approved logo, and then you decide what you want on your page. What we truly want every page to have are, in the district, what are your resources? But most importantly, what are your helpline numbers? And this one happens to be in Nagpur, India. I happen to pick that one. And these are for the different cities in the state of Nagpur and all the different helplines that they have. But you can put all different kinds of information there. And the other thing is, once we work with you to get that page up and running, you're tagged on the map. Now we have 34 chapters, but you notice we have 13 and 4 and 6 and 9 and 3, and that doesn't add up to 34 because not everybody has gotten their act together yet on getting their landing page on our website with solid information. And rather than just have a dead page, we don't even put you up until you have worked with our chapter liaison board member, Alan, and get it functioning with especially the resources and your helplines. So we have that opportunity for your country chapter too. Once you're approved, the Rotary World opens to you on our website.
That's really amazing, Bonnie. And I every time I see it, the first time I saw it, I felt like this is such an exciting opportunity, but now I'm seeing it again and I feel that all over again. And I'm hoping that our participants tonight are seeing this as a way, as you said, like the world of Rotary opens up to you in terms of all of the connections between our clubs, our districts, and of course, our many, many members globally. So
Yeah.
if you have an idea and want to, put it out into the world, this is an amazing way to do it, right?
Yeah.
Was there anything further that you wanted to say on Rotary Action Groups on mental health initiatives more generally before we hand over to Sean?
Yeah. We as a board, we cannot, well, let's put it this way. It's impossible for us, even though we have board members globally, to know what's going to work for you. So we encourage chapters to actually create your own toolkits. Now, we will guide you because we have certain formats. And we also say we need to have testimonials, video or written. You have to have tried this project at least 3 times with some tangible data results. And then we will take your toolkit and open it to the Rotary world also. For instance, we talk about culture. Don't bottle it up. Originated in Great Britain because culturally, in many of the colonized world of the British Empire, that phrase, bottling it up, is to keep it within inside of you. But what happened during the last, just before the Singapore Convention, we became aware from other chapters that that phrase meant nothing to them. It's a very English idiom. So we said, okay, how about using Gordon's phrase, how are you really? And those 2 countries said, that works. Because the whole point is get a conversation going. So we created a toolkit called How Are You Really? For countries where don't bottle it up has no meaning. So that's the local resources we hope to be able to offer to the entire Rotary world is that as our chapters grow, resources can grow also. I hope
Mhm.
that helps.
No, that is very helpful. And there are great ideas there for shared learning across different chapters. And so I think you've given us a really nice platform to segue into Sean telling us more about how the Country Action Group on Mental Health Initiatives Trinidad and Tobago chapter came into being. So Sean, without further ado, the floor is yours.
Thanks so much, guys. And I'm just gonna go off script here for a second, for a couple things. First is, let me just openly again say thank you to Bonnie for all her help in getting our chapter up and running. She's been an invaluable resource and continues to be an invaluable resource for us. I also like to thank Alyssa for this opportunity for us to speak on the establishment of chapters, particularly country chapters for our district. I think, it's a great opportunity for both our members and our clubs to, explore new ways and new opportunities to get more involved in Rotary other than, the traditional club path. And as Bonnie mentioned as well, it's an opportunity for non-members of Rotary to get involved with us, because through action groups and through chapters of action groups, non-members can participate in really great initiatives, really meaningful and significantly impactful actions. And then last but not least, I just want to acknowledge the fact that many of the persons present here tonight are actually from the Trinidad and Tobago chapter uh, of the Rotary Action Group on Mental Health Initiatives. So thank you guys for being here. So, to kind of give a very, very concise and brief idea of what the journey has been so far for the Country Action Group on Mental Health Initiatives for Trinidad and Tobago, or the Trinidad and Tobago country chapter the RAG. I put together, a little something here, and I hope it kind of makes sense to everybody. And so, the way I wanted to kick things off here was just to kind of break it down into, it's a process that you have to go through, and it's certain kind of steps and phases that need to be followed, whether you plan it out intentionally or whether you discover them by accident. So I just happened to pick the letter E today, and I went with five segments of the journey so far, with all E's. So we're going to kind of go through each one relatively quickly, and then I'll give a little bit more information and detail in terms of certain things that the chapter itself discovered and put into practice. It's, in realizing itself. So the kind of first step in this journey, right, was exploration or exploring. As Bonnie mentioned, the RAG on mental health initiatives has been around since 2016. And they did incredible work for 6-7 years. And it was in the 2023-2024 Rotary year under then President Gordon McInally, where mental health really kind of came to a bit more of the forefront amongst the Rotary world, because he highlighted it as one of his presidential initiatives and really encouraged clubs and districts and members to take notice of the importance of mental health and mental wellness and mental well-being, not just within and amongst our communities, but also internally amongst members and amongst clubs. And I think that, kind of really gave myself and a few others, the push we needed to say, hey, we really need to start paying more attention to mental health and mental wellness, both locally, regionally. And so, the first thing we did is kind of look at the fact that, hey, everywhere, doesn't matter where you are, doesn't matter whether it's a small town or a big city or an entire country or a district of multiple countries, they're going to be folks that are in need. They're going to be folks that need help as far as mental health is concerned. Sometimes it's a little bit of help, sometimes it's a lot of help. But, the mere fact that you can, in going through this first step, if you can identify some of the gaps and some of the needs that exist within your community and within your areas, that more or less kind of gives you the justification for seeking some type of solution. To balance it off, you also kind of want to locate what existing solutions may exist on a local level. What is it that's being provided currently to persons in need as far as mental health resources, mental health facilities, and are those needs being met by the current local solutions? And then you want to look and see, well, hey, what is Rotary doing? What's out there in the Rotary world to help address this issue, or to help maybe relieve some of these gaps in some way? And obviously, once you start going through that process, whether you knew about it before or you end up stumbling upon it, you come upon the Rotary Action Group on Mental Health Initiatives, which is what happened with us. And that took us kind of into the next step, right, which is about engaging and engagement. So, first step was kind of having this dialogue with the experts, all right, and in particular with the Rotary Action Group on Mental Health Initiatives, and even in more particular with Bonnie, and kind of seeing, what exactly are the opportunities here, what works, what could work, how applicable is it to what you've already identified as some of the gaps and needs within your local communities or your country. And, once you can say to yourself, hey, this is something that we can definitely see working and see helping people, right? Not necessarily contradicting what already exists, but enhancing it, helping it, supporting it. So kind of, what we looked at next is putting together a bit of a team, a planning team on a local level, and in this case on a country level, that would, help kind of put these ideas and put these thoughts together in a more coherent fashion, In particular, we actively went after local experts. And if you're lucky enough, like we were, you can find local member experts. So persons who are already part of the Rotary family, who have experience and expertise in the field of mental health. And we were fortunate to find such persons. And, between them and about 4 or 5 other really dedicated persons, we kind of formed this local planning team back in January of this year. And over the course of the next 3 or 4 months or so, we brainstormed a lot. We discussed different approaches, methods, solutions to address problems that were identified. We looked at what, again, was available, already existing in terms of available resources and available facilities, and how they can be leveraged. A lot of the times the problem isn't that there is no solution. The problem is people don't know about the solutions, right? Again, there's an issue that, always comes up with regards to the stigma attached to mental health. There's an issue with regards to awareness of what's out there. And so, part of the job here is not necessarily, again, it's not to contradict or to conflict with what's already out there, but to help support it, to help enhance it. Which leads me to the next step, which is enhancement and enhancing things, right? So, as Bonnie mentioned, the RAG on mental health initiatives, they provide a lot of support, and they provide a lot of guidance and a lot of assistance when it comes to the establishment of a chapter. And I would actually go so far to say, even if it's not with regards to the establishment of a chapter, and it's something that your club or your district or a committee in your club is interested in doing towards mental health, reach out to the RAG. They can provide you with speakers on a particular topic. They can provide you with additional resources, such as the toolkits that may be applicable to the issue that you're trying to address. It's not just limited to chapters, right? A lot of clubs and a lot of individual members have also joined the RAG and have also derived resources and benefits from the RAG, other than chapters. But through those resources that the RAG provides, which includes, guidelines on how to set up a chapter, draft bylaws for that chapter, suggestions as far as, how to best govern yourselves. We just kind of adapted and adopted what was relevant and what worked best for us. Obviously, in that process, we communicated and worked with the RAG through Bonnie to make sure that what we were doing was in sync with both the RAG itself as well as with RI. We also looked at, obviously sometimes you can be overwhelmed by how many issues and problems and different types of groups are out there that are in need. And you just eventually have to come to the realization that there's so much you can do. So you need to streamline your solutions. And that was part of that enhancement phase. We kind of decided, hey, look, we can't do everything at once. So let's tackle certain things in a very structured and phased approach. And we want to also make sure that we develop practical programs and practical activities and practical actions that are really going to target the issues and target the gaps and, seek to really improve them and enhance them or fill them in a way that can make a significant difference. And then last but not least, you want to now start building this idea of you're going to be putting together a group of persons who are interested or just as interested in, helping persons in need and particularly within the forum of mental health. So, you want to just start kind of soliciting interested parties, kind of start putting feelers out there. Hey, we're looking to do something. This is the forum in which we're looking to do it. Anybody out there who's interested? We did that, and we got a lot of responses from members of both Rotary and Rotaract clubs in Trinidad and Tobago. Once we've kind of had a lot of those elements starting to fall into place, we now switched gears a bit and started looking at more the actual establishment of the chapter. And there's certain principles and there's certain best practices that have to be followed, whether it's from a governance standpoint, an administrative standpoint. We want to make sure that we consistently keep it relevant by promoting it locally. Not just amongst the Rotary family, but also, we want to try and bring in as many more experts and advisors and professionals within the field who can really, again, just help build bridges and help develop solutions that are a lot more feasible, a lot more viable, a lot more practical. And then the last part of it is kind of just now, do you have, parties who are interested, and then out of that, you may get a certain percentage of them who are ready to commit. And we want to make sure that we, onboard in those committed parties. And so that part is essentially saying, hey, are you really interested? Are you ready to commit? Do you really want to become a member of this chapter? Oops. And we're kind of in this last phase now, right? Which is execution. And in that particular, or in this particular phase of it, we want to kind of look at, what are our goals? Are they reasonable? What are our time frames? Are they manageable? Right? We don't want to overstretch. We don't want to overreach. We don't want to bite off more than we can chew. And we want to make sure that what we start, we can finish. And in the same breath, we want to make sure that we can expand and we can adapt. So, taking a very practical approach to setting reasonable goals and setting reasonable timeframes is something that we continuously make sure that in this execution phase of it, we're doing. Something that is always going to be very prominent and very at the forefront with me especially is looking and actively seeking out collaborations and partnerships. I'm a firm believer in that there's no need to reinvent the wheel. If somebody's already out there doing something, there's no need for you to also do it again, when you can just reach out to them and see if there's an opportunity to collaborate, see if there's an opportunity to partner, see if there's an opportunity to leverage their resources with your resources, and you help each other out, and you find that mutually beneficial ground, or that you build that bridge to connect each other. So we definitely have identified certain local entities, even regional entities, that we want to partner with as a chapter. One of our core aspects of execution is make sure that everyone gets involved. No one is left out. Every one of our members is encouraged and somewhat almost gonna be forced, I would say, to be actively participating in one or more of the activities under the chapter. If you were committed enough to join, then you should be committed enough to participate and to actively contribute and to, find an aspect of it that you really want to sink your teeth into. So making sure and continuously checking that everyone is involved and everyone is participating is part of this execution phase. And then last but not least, again, things change, circumstances change, people change, timelines change. So we need to always make sure that we're ready and able to pivot, to change courses, to, adapt and adopt what we need to be in terms of our environment, in terms of our goals, in terms of our actions and activities. Otherwise, if you might find yourself kind of always running into obstacles and maybe even sometimes hitting a wall when you try and execute something, or you try to make something happen that just will not happen because of other circumstances. So you need to pivot, or you need to at least be able to pivot. So those were the kind of the five steps, phases, segments of the journey so far. And then this next part here, I just wanted to give an idea of, a little bit, drill down a little bit more into the actual details of the specifics for the Trinidad and Tobago country chapter on mental health initiatives. So again, as Bonnie and both Alyssa would have mentioned before, there are a lot of benefits to chapters, whether it's a district chapter or whether it's a country chapter. I've just kind of focused it a little bit more for country chapters here. But, you know, again, you can really fine tune and focus, right? More appropriate support in local communities when you have your own chapter. You don't have to necessarily take something that is generic or something that may not be culturally or you know, from a custom standpoint applicable to your community or your area. You can develop them, and you can find something a bit more appropriate with a chapter approach. You can, with a chapter as well, you know, better opportunities for local partnerships and networking are available because you're a local entity, right? You're not something that is based in and operating from another country or another territory. You're here with these other entities, with these other organizations, groups, associations, companies that also that share the same kind of values that you have, and you know, want to accomplish the same things as you do. So again, having a local entity, having a country chapter that can partner with these other parties helps. And then, you know, you can provide members and clubs and even the community with more bespoke resources. As Bonnie mentioned, one of the things that the RAG has been promoting and continues to promote is the development of more customized or bespoke toolkits, you know, that a bit more applicable in your area and in your communities, and it works for you. And if it's something that can, you know, be elevated and enhanced to the point that it's applicable to more communities, it can, you know, be shared by the RAG. And that's definitely something that our country chapter is currently looking into, is developing our own country specific toolkits. You know, hey, if it works for us, great. If we get it elevated to the point where it can work in other countries and in other districts, even better. But if not, at least it's working for us, and it's producing good results. A little bit more on certain aspects of it that I thought were important and just wanted to kind of cover again quickly. You know, when it comes to governance, that's always, you know, a place that you want to start, right? So for us, it was all about what our vision and mission is, and our vision and mission is essentially almost a replica of what the global RAG's vision and mission is, what the global Rotary Action Group on Mental Health Initiatives vision and mission is. You know, our priorities are pretty much the same with regards to breaking the stigma, increasing awareness, and increasing access and capacity, right? We share those exact same priorities as the global RAG. You know, you want to make sure that your bylaws for your chapter are set up and are applicable for you. Part of our process included taking the standard bylaws for a chapter from the RAG and just making little tweaks here and there that made more sense for us as a country chapter. Obviously, again, running it by the RAG, making sure that it's in line with what they need to do and what they're bound to do, as well as making sure that it's in line with general RI policy, is all part of the process. But at the end, it's worth it because you end up with bylaws that are, you know, just a little bit more tailored for your needs and for your capacities. In our case, decision was made that we will incorporate our country chapter for several reasons. In every country and in every territory, the reasons for incorporation may be a bit different, but in our case, we saw it as a benefit, so it's something we will be doing. And then, of course, we want to make sure that we are compliant with all nonprofit regulations on a national level. In Trinidad and Tobago, as well as in many other countries within our district, there are specific nonprofit regulations that need to be followed. Sometimes it's just a matter of following them. Sometimes it's more a matter of having to submit, you know, annual reports and paperwork every year. Regardless of what it is, you know, we want to make sure and follow that. From an administrative standpoint, we, you know, kind of wanted to make sure that we kept this idea of inclusion, leadership, impact, and succession. those were kind of the four terms we used in designing any kind of administrative approach and coming up with any kind of administrative solution. And one example of this was when we were kind of considering how to really compose the board of directors for our chapter. The RAG more or less tells us that we need to have at least 3 officers as part of the board. That's the chair of the chapter, secretary of the chapter, and the treasurer of the chapter. Must have those 3. So obviously, our chapter has to have those 3. But we also started kind of, again, during our brainstorming session and as we vetted things out over the course of a few months, we decided, there were certain other positions on the board that we thought were key and important and should be made part of that overall structure. One was program coordinator, because that's really what our job is to develop programs. And I'll be clear in when I mention programs. Programs being frameworks, guidelines, resources that clubs and members can tap into so as to execute bigger and better service projects. At the end of the day, Rotary clubs and Rotaract clubs, those are the action arms of Rotary. Rotary Action Groups are not meant to be a substitute for them. Rotary Action Groups and the chapters of Rotary Action Groups are meant to help clubs and members execute projects, because that's the primary job of a club. Oh, well, one of the primary jobs of a club. We also thought it was important to make sure that we include Rotaract. So there's a Rotaract appointment on the board. In Trinidad and Tobago, we have 23 clubs, which is a lot considering our size. So, to help manage all of those clubs, 23 Rotary clubs, to help manage a lot of those clubs, we just kind of, again, wanted a bit of a hierarchical approach to it. So we duplicated what we have in our district as far as clusters, and we have various persons representing each cluster of clubs in Trinidad and Tobago as part of the board. And then, of course, there's certain rules, regulations, guidelines, best practices when it comes to persons sitting on the board as directors that come both from RI as well as from the RAG. Things like, no person should be sitting more than 3 successive years in an appointed position, and that 80% of your board needs to be active members of the Rotary family. And again, the reason that's there is because RAGs, which is a great thing, RAGs can include non-members of the Rotary family. In terms of goals, skipped. Another aspect of it, in terms of administration, was our committees. We went back and forth a lot, and eventually we came to a decision on kind of these 7 committees that will kind of be, again, the working groups of our chapter. Everything covering club engagement, providing club support, again, developing and implementing programs. That RAG Resource Development Committee, again, that is all about, things like toolkits, right? We want to make sure that we adopt and adapt where necessary. The toolkits come in from the RAG, as well as we want to make sure and develop our own toolkits as well, local toolkits as well. Strategic partnerships, as I mentioned before, partnerships are really important. So we want to make sure that we have a dedicated group actively seeking out, maintaining partnerships. Fundraising, hey, can never escape fundraising. Obviously, certain things take money. We have to find sometimes new and creative ways to raise money. So we have a team dedicated towards that. And then last but not least, we want to always ensure that, because this is a relatively new venture within Trinidad and Tobago, within our district, within our Rotary fraternity here, we want to make sure that we always get the right messaging out, the right branding out, and stay relevant and stay significant, right, amongst our both internally amongst our Rotary family and externally amongst our communities. So this is where public image comes into play. These were kind of some of the generic goals that were set early on in our RAG. We want to make sure that we build internal capacity, and again, you'll see a lot of similarities in some of these goals compared to the priorities of the RAG. And by building internal capacity means all our members will, receive certain amounts of learning and opportunities and training opportunities to help broaden their understanding and awareness and just overall information when it comes to mental health and mental health issues and mental health solutions. We want to make sure that we engage with clubs consistently. We want to make sure that we have certain types of outreach targeting specific groups sometimes. So whether it's looking at how we best reach youth, how we best reach migrants, which is a particular demographic and group here in Trinidad and Tobago that sometimes go a bit unnoticed, sometimes go a bit untreated. So we want to make sure that we address their needs and their concerns. And then, of course, we want to also have an approach towards the private sector. So that's why we have a bit of a corporate outreach goal as well. In terms of our ongoing and upcoming activities, one of our kind of key objective is to make sure that we have 100% representation from every single Rotary and Rotaract club in Trinidad and Tobago, where we want to encourage every club to have at least one member join the country chapter. We want to make sure and promote those same 8 toolkits that Bonnie showed you guys. We want to make sure that clubs know that those toolkits exist. So, we are dedicated to making sure that that message and the promotion of those toolkits happens on a regular basis amongst clubs and members. We have monthly board meetings scheduled, and we decided to keep board meetings on a monthly basis for several reasons, none the least of which is the fact that, again, we're a new endeavor, a new initiative. So, we don't want too much time to pass when it comes to having to make important and critical decisions, considering we're still in that kind of newborn phase. With regards to our general membership meetings, we have those on a bi-monthly basis. And again, there's reason and rationale behind that. We don't want too much time to pass, but in the same breath, we don't want anyone who's involved to feel like, this is a little overwhelming or a little too time consuming. In between those monthly membership meetings is when we really want work to get done with our committees. Within the next few months or so, we want to launch at least 2 programs or 2 actions under our country chapter. And we plan to have at least one fundraising event. In terms of some challenges, and I'm almost done, some things that kind of came up over the 6 to 8 months that we've been dealing with this. You're always going to find that vigilance is key in every aspect. And one particular area that you need to remain vigilant in is just maintaining member interest and engagement, right? It's easy for somebody to click a button to say, yes, they're interested. It's a different story to keep them interested and to keep them coming back and to keep them wanting more. So, making sure that you have a plan and you have a means to overcome that inevitable challenge. Because remember, you're always competing for attention. Just within the Rotary world itself, there are about, every member gets pulled in about 5-6 different directions. So you need to make sure that, when you, as a chapter, tap them on the shoulder or need them to participate in something, they're interested in it. Again, you can sometimes get a bit lost or overwhelmed when you start looking into the scope and possible solutions that your chapter can tackle. And, it can sometimes lead to overstretching yourself. It can lead to indecisiveness. It can lead to spreading your resources too thin. So you want to manage those things in a very controlled and reasonable way. And then last but not least, you want to make sure that you budget efficiently and effectively. In any kind of these endeavors, especially when it's new, there's rarely a solid frame of reference that will work for you. So you're kind of having to build things from scratch. And there are always going to be a lot of unknowns. So you want to, again, take a very careful and thoughtful approach when it comes to budgets, when it comes to the finances of things. You don't want to, scare people away by charging them too much. But in the same breath, you don't want to sell things too short that you find yourself always in a bit of financial difficulty. So finding a little bit of a balance there is always going to be a somewhat of a challenge to overcome. And that's about it for me. Sorry I went a couple minutes over, but I hope that kind of provided you guys with a little bit of a roadmap, for lack of a better term. Thanks, Alyssa, on what we've done so far and how we got there. Feel free, if you guys have any questions after the session, you can email me, you can message me. And if you haven't done so as yet, you can check out our website, you can shoot us an email, or you can follow us on social media. Thanks again.
I thank you so much, Sean. There's no problem with you running over. I think you've given us such an exhaustive playbook on how you should go about this step by step, from the vision stage of just thinking, oh, this is something we'd like to do, all the way through to actually executing. And as you likely know and have been telling us, that's about more than simply having an idea. There are things that have to be followed in order to actually get that idea off the ground, and also to make it sustainable. And so I was hoping that, based on now the information that we have from Bonnie about Rotary Action Groups on a global scale, and now what you've shared with us about the process toward getting the Country Action Group on mental health initiatives in Trinidad get started, whether we can have some conversation with our participants, well, between us and also with the participants, about some of probably the hiccups, maybe the do's and don'ts around getting started. You actually mentioned some of these, but I would love to hear you get into greater detail. In terms of those very early days when you're going from, okay, we've been told by the global RAG, hey, you all can start country chapters, and that's going to be the specific version of this that we're going to use in the Caribbean. How did you go about finding even your interested parties? I think for some people, they might be interested in knowing, well, how did you even begin from that standpoint?
So, it starts with the people right? At the end of the day, they're persons that you can immediately reach out to, persons within your circles that you can immediately reach out to and be like, hey, here's an idea. What do you think? And is it something that you can see yourself putting a little bit of time and effort into and committing to for the next, 50 years? I'm kidding, not 50 years, right? But that's Rotary, right? 50 years. It starts with them, and then it blossoms from there. They can think of about 5 or 6 other people, and before you know it, you can have at least a core group of persons to help you kind of chart the next steps and chart the way forward, and who really want to see something like this happen. They have that passion, they have that care and concern about it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And again, I think a critical step in it is, one of the scariest things I think we all face is when we have to stare at a blank page, right? Everybody's terrified of a blank page. Where do I start? What are they talking about? How do I do this? So one of the first things that we wanted to make sure that, when we started to promote or talk about the establishment of a chapter or the idea of a chapter, is that we didn't show people a blank page. We gave them something that they can actually, relate to, or it made sense, hopefully, to them. And that was just, again, during the brainstorming phase. At least it's not a blank page. At least it's, hey, here's some of the ideas we're thinking about. What do you think? Hey, here's some of the approaches we're thinking about. What do you think? And, you find a lot of times that people may quicker provide feedback on something than if you just say, do you have an idea? Let me know. And nothing else to feedback on. So that helped a lot in the process, is that core group, really and truly, it helped refine some of the thoughts and ideas, and kind of brought them a little closer from being an idea to being an actual solution.
Mm-hmm.
Because again, ideas can pop in and out of your head like there's no tomorrow. But whether or not it's practical, whether it's not, it's actually applicable and appropriate. That's the question. So once we can present, practical ideas and practical approaches to things, I think it resonated with a good few people, and they saw the value in it, and were at first interested, and then ready to commit, and then committed. Yeah.
No, thank you so much for that. I really love that advice of the notion that, and I think it really is true. Anybody who sat down to do any new piece of work, the idea of having uncharted territory, that blank page of like not knowing where to go. So giving your prospective members something to go from, what is this going to be? What are we looking to do with this? And actually like kind of having a bit of a pitch speech and something that people can connect to. I'm curious about this from your standpoint too, Bonnie, because we're kind of breaking this new ground in the Caribbean in terms of country action groups, but you would have been at the very basement level, the founding of the global RAG. Do you have anything further to say based on what Sean's advice was, or when you look back, think, okay, what might have I done? What might I have done different in order to galvanize people and have them come on board? Or maybe things that you did that were really successful in terms of doing that.
Well, being a global perspective, and that is a heavy lift for a lot of people. And we had trouble bringing people on board for our board to get started because people were looking at home in their very blinder kind of thing and say, no, this is a global action group. So we turned to WHO, the World Health Organization. They've got researchers, they've got scientists, they have data. Some countries, it may be 1 in 5 people, adults, let's say, with a mental health challenge each year. Other countries, it's 1 in 3. So they've got a heavier lift than the countries who have 1 in 5. Yet I've also realized that the countries that have more mental health challenges in their population are not necessarily ready, willing, and able to address that. And that's where the breaking of the stigma has to happen first. And then a raising of awareness. Many times we'll get a chapter somewhere in the world who says, oh, we're going to work on this, or we want to work on that. And we have to be realistic, whomever the regional rep is, and say, how do you know that's important in your community? Well, my friend, okay, how about the wider community? So it's like getting out of your own little colloquial area and saying, okay, for my country or for my district, what are the needs? Many chapters have done a needs assessment, just like we would do for a global grant. The chapters in their formations have done community needs assessments using the same tool that we use when we go and we say, oh, I think a global grant could help here. We really need to hear from all the people, not just a few people. And I think that's important. And that's why I truly have appreciated Trinidad and Tobago's approach, because they were ready to really get down into the country and say, we need to find out, not just from the 6 or 8 of us meeting here, but what's really going on in the country? Where should we focus?
I could definitely see how that would give people something else to attach to as well. If it feels relevant, if it meets the felt needs of the people in the country, then you feel convinced of like, oh, the importance of what we're doing as well.
Right. And that's why it's not quick necessarily. Some people want to do the cookie cutter thing, and our board will not allow cookie cutter things because we've learned over time, you have a cookie cutter, it makes 1 sheet of cookies and it doesn't want to bake anymore.
So as you had said this yourself, Bonnie, and Sean had re-emphasized this, but a big part of this is the idea that you're being given the opportunity to create a chapter so that you can tailor. It
Yes.
is so that it can be specific, so that it can meet the requirements of wherever you are.
Have to be
Okay.
relevant.
Yeah. Both of you had emphasized the importance of partnerships, and Sean in particular, you had talked about, the importance of finding other stakeholders and persons who you can collaborate with. You need kind of a force multiplier for the things that you're doing. What strategies did you employ in identifying and engaging with partners? And in the same way that maybe we talked about how you convince Rotarians of the importance of this, how did you go about, bringing strategic partners over to your side?
Want me to go? Yeah.
Yes,
Okay.
please.
Yeah,
So,
that's you.
Sure.
so I will preface what I'm about to say by saying that's an ongoing process. All right. Um, but let me actually use something that Bonnie just mentioned. Bonnie said just now, when they found themselves in a bit of a pickle, they reached out to the WHO for help, right? If that's not a good example of the benefits of of collaboration and partnerships and exchange, I don't know what is, right? And that's how simple it can be. It's just identifying who may be able to help and reaching out to them. On a local level, for us, we've already identified, I would say, close to about 10 to 15 parties. And I'll use the word parties to represent individuals, associations, organizations, and whatnot, right there, in terms of who we see benefit in partnering with. That includes both at a government level, at an NGO level, at a private sector level, because you have to look at the full spectrum of things, right? Within Trinidad and Tobago, there are already several government facilities and government programs that exist to help persons help with mental health issues. Again, the first question is, how effective are they? And second question is, how well are they known amongst communities? And depending on what the answer is for each of those, that's where I see the conversation starting when we reach out to them. Is, hey, first and foremost, I'm not even going to ask you for anything. I'm going to ask you, how can we help you? Whether it's how can we help you get the message out? We have 23 Rotary clubs and 15 Rotaract clubs spread throughout the country. Can we use them to help you get your message out about the facilities that you offer and the resources that you offer, right? From a non-government organization perspective, there are several groups and associations out there that have banded together towards a particular mental health issue or general mental health awareness. Again, we can help each other. And I would say the strategy when it comes to any or all of those is, first and foremost, again, taking a little bit of time to research what these guys do and how they do it. At least building a certain level of familiarity so that when you do cold call them or cold email them, if you don't happen to know anybody working there, or don't have a foot in the door, at least, again, you have a basis for that discussion where you can now say to yourself, hey, again, the first thing out of my mouth is, how can we help you? Or this is how we can maybe help you, right? The first thing is not necessarily to ask for something. It's to offer something, right? At least that's the approach I see us taking. And then one of the other things I'll mention too, going back to something Bonnie said, with us, we really want to make sure that, and I'll be very blunt when I say this, that we're taken seriously.
Mhm.
Not just with partners, but also just with clubs, members, the community in general. Because we don't just want to talk the talk. We don't just want to say, hey, we're doing great things. We want to show that we're doing great things. So a lot of that, when you really drill down a bit on it, or when you scratch the surface on it, what it comes down to is being able to measure impact and being able to demonstrate impact, whether it's quantitatively or qualitatively. And in order to do that, you need to have at least a starting point and then the point at which you're at to show where, there's growth or where the change took place. So one of the things that we've identified for our chapter is, again, seeking out these possible partners and these possible collaborations where we want statistics, we want data on what's currently measured. So within Trinidad and Tobago, under our Ministry of Health, we have, I think it's I'll stand corrected, please don't. It's around 8 regional health authorities. And each one of those regional health authorities collects certain information. Right? Whether it's on incidents, whether it's on surveys, whether it's so, if we can get some of that information and now, at least to help us set baselines, to help set KPIs on certain metrics, right? We can now come up with a bit of a rubric or a bit of a schema on, okay, how do we, we're not approaching this from a heavily statistics standpoint, but just really and truly, where are we at, and how is what we're going to do going to help improve things? And then I'll be able to show and demonstrate to that, whether it's to our members, whether it's to clubs, whether it's to our partners, whether it's to communities, and say, hey, again, we're not just walking the walk. We're not just talking the talk. We're walking the walk. And again, to me, that's what it comes down to, is being able to say that what you're doing has a noticeable, significant, visible, measurable impact. Yeah.
Thank you so much for that, Sean. I think so. That first point about, how you might go about engaging with partners and presenting yourself, presenting the chapter as a resource to them first, I think is a great way of introducing yourself. And it also lends kind of an air of importance as well. Like, we believe in what we're doing. We believe we can be useful to you in doing what you already do, or in enhancing what you do. I love that. I also do want to re-emphasize what you just said. Like, it's right in the name. It's a country action group. It's not a country meeting group or a country talking group, right? So the idea here is, if you are somebody who has been looking at the landscape of mental health advocacy in your country and thinking, I want to see something concrete happen, I want to see the needle move, then this is the type of group that you get involved in, right? So I see we've got just about 15 minutes left. I think this would be a good time for us to open up the floor to our participants. We got such a good turnout tonight, and I was noticing that in the introductions, we've got coverage from pretty much almost the entire district. The only ones that I didn't see, well, this is for people who actually typed where they were from. I don't think I saw anyone from the ABCs. I know I saw Martinique, but I don't think I saw Guadeloupe. But I saw everyone from Antigua St. Kitts all the way down to Guyana, and I'm so pleased. And like Bonnie, so pleased to see such a turnout from Rotaractors as well. And I'm sure this would be near and dear to Sean's heart as well, that anything that has to do with mental health advocacy. I mean, I'm presenting an opinion here, and I'm hoping that Sean will agree with me, that youth involvement is a key aspect of that. Not only because of how mental health conditions affect people who are young, and the fact that we can do the most good, sorry, in terms of preventing mental health. When we intervene when people are younger. Oh, we do have people from Curacao. Hi, welcome. So this is the moment for anybody who has questions to put them in the Q&A box. So we did have a question a while ago from Rotary Club of Kingston, from my home country, from St. Vincent. What are the mental health implications of crises? So for example, the COVID-19 pandemic or other natural disasters, and how can communities build resilience in their aftermath? So I'm thinking that this person may be asking, so, given that we're subject to crises and disasters, how can a country action group be helpful with respect to that? Any thoughts about that, either Bonnie or Sean?
I would jump in and just note that those types of crises you mentioned, or any type really, it's a traumatic experience for certain people. The same people can go through the exact same experience. Some will have trauma and some will bounce back. Their resiliency is primed and ready. They've been good to their own mental health over time. So they have that ability to bounce back quicker. Others, due to personal life experiences, their resiliency has been whittled down and down. So, first, your Ministry of Health, what do they have? As they will term it as recovery, how you do your recovery from a natural disaster. Now, in that information, I personally believe it's extremely important for the Ministry of Health to note the mental health recovery. And if that's really not delineated, there's a partnership to begin. How can we as Rotarians help you develop and provide data and information that we can communicate? There are generic on the World Health WHO website, as well as some other research institutes globally, information on trauma recovery for mental health. Some of the general stuff could be applicable, but boy, I would work within your own Ministry of Health. They need to know how to recover mentally from trauma.
Thank you so much for that, Bonnie. Any thoughts, Sean, in terms of, I mean, we're from countries that go through disasters all the time, right?
Well, I would say no one is from any country that does not go through a disaster or a crisis at
Mhm.
some point, right?
Yeah.
Because disasters and crises come in all different shapes and sizes. It can be a health disaster, it can be a natural disaster, it can be a man-made disaster, right? I mean, let's just look at what's happening now and over the last 6 months. At the very beginning, the first week of the Rotary year, our district got hit by Hurricane Beryl. And, we witnessed severe devastation in a lot of areas. Over the last, 2-3 weeks, we had Hurricane Helene and Hurricane Milton, right? I mean, go through the East Coast, the Southeast, and again, so many, extreme because there were so many deaths, right? Um, the question mentioned COVID, right, which was just a global crisis for everyone, and how best that can be addressed and dealt with. And Bonnie's suggestion there, yeah, hit up your Ministry of Health, hit up your local agencies and whatnot. But I'll add to that. In our district, and I'll go so far to say in most districts, there's pretty much somewhere, whether it's right on the top or buried somewhere beneath the surface, there's a committee that's dedicated towards like disaster recovery or disaster relief or disaster preparedness. And it's the preparedness one that I kind of wanted to address. I think it's incumbent upon us as a district and as members of a district to ask the question, hey, is part of our disaster preparedness or disaster relief or disaster recovery plans or initiatives, does that include a mental health component to it? Does that include providing support to people after these traumatic experiences have happened? How are we doing that? Have we, are we encouraging local clubs to reach out to ministry? So to me, you can take that. That's something you can definitely take at a district level and encourage clubs and members to do, right? Make it part of like your district plan and your district, what's the word? Gospel almost. Yeah.
No, I
Let's go
love
with
that.
guidelines, right?
Yes, I love that as an idea. I think so. There was actually someone who dropped in the Q&A box that in Trinidad following the pandemic, so Keisha Lewis made this contribution that the Ministry of Health set up a technical working group for mental health and psychosocial support. I'm familiar with it. I did some work collaboratively with them. And just thinking about, when we talked about areas for collaboration or partnership for a country action group, these could be wonderful people to align with, to amplify messaging, to push more thinking around preparedness, because that part of response to disasters is woefully underappreciated, under-resourced, and underfunded.
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing, right? Most disasters, when they happen, the one thing that you will quickly find yourself overwhelmed by, bottles of water, right? You will very quickly get to that point, like, we don't need any
Need
more
many more
water,
water.
right? Which is great. That's a great problem to have, right? But the question really is, because that's the first thing that pops in people's head is, oh, let me send water, let me send canned goods, let me send. That's great. Nothing's wrong with that. The question that rings with me is, what are we not sending? What is it that's really needed, or that is not being provided, either as much as it's needed or in any way at all? And I'm sorry, in a lot of cases, what you'll find is, that type of help and that type of relief when it comes to the trauma of a disaster or a crisis. It's just not there. It's ignored. People think that, oh yeah, well, we gave you a bottle of water and a meal, so you should be good, right?
Well,
Yeah.
particularly in the wake of a big disaster, well, I think
Correct.
I'm now coming at this with my psychologist hat on. Is that the tough part comes when you've left the 24-hour news cycle, and now we're moving into the recovery phase. And this is where a lot of the impact on people's, say, their livelihoods or children's education, or just the stressors of attempting to kind of pick up the pieces, those things really start to have a strong impact on people's mental health at that point. And it's at that very moment that a lot of the support tends to be drying up.
And the
So,
last thing I'll just say on the matter as well is just, I think we have to remember too, and this is one of the reasons I was kind of advocating for more of a district approach, is that we have to remember too that the local resources that we sometimes rely upon, they're also affected by the disaster itself.
sure.
So, they may not necessarily be in the right state, the right frame of mind, or have the ability to provide the type of support and relief. So that's why we need to kind of, come together and band from a more regional approach to it, right? How can we, I may not be in that country that just went through a traumatic experience. How can I help? Right? Yes, I can send bottles of water, and yes, I can send cans of food. But, from this perspective, how can I help with that mental health recovery and that mental health response? Yeah.
No, that's a great point and very
Teleconferencing
true.
is a great means to try and at least start it, right? It's pretty much, free and available to everybody, right? I mean, short of the infrastructure in the country affected is down, but you get where I'm going. Like, they're
Yes.
solutions that can present themselves relatively easily. Yeah.
So there's another question that came up, and this was from Tanya Western, who's asking which of the 7 Rotary areas of focus has the closest connection to mental health?
We are thrown under disease prevention and treatment. And the reason is mental illness is a brain disease. We need to accept it. This is an organ that has problems just like any other organ may have on or in our body. And of course, that's a leap for many cultures because they don't necessarily accept that as a physical organ, the brain can have malfunction like a heart, lungs,
Mhm.
stomach, anything else. Again, that's a cultural difference, but that's why we are under disease prevention and treatment.
Mhm. I figured looking at the 7 areas of focus that that's where we would fit,
Yep.
but I would think we also have some happy knock-on effects in other areas, which is the case with mental health generally, right?
Oh, yeah. I mean, when we
Kind
talk
of.
disasters, look at environment.
Right. So it's
There we
kind
are,
of, you
you
get
know.
a sort of rising tide lifts all boats sort of
Yes.
situation. If people have better mental health, it's easy to see how that's going to influence economic and community development because you have more
Exactly.
healthy, active citizens. It's also easy to see how that's going to influence peace and conflict
Yes.
prevention, right?
Yes.
All
Yes.
right.
And increasing capacity, which is our third, break stigma, raise awareness, increase
Ooh.
capacity, not only within systems, but that disaster preparedness falls under increased capacity. So how are you going to get your geographic region prepared better? It is a systems issue, but not necessarily in a mental health, behavioral health system. It is a governmental, community-wide, a different kind of system that's going to be, need to have that
Okay,
building of capacity.
definitely. So Sean, you have your hand up?
So I just wanted to take this opportunity. I'm gonna just demonstrate cohesiveness here.
Sure.
So I'm gonna put it out there that, whether it's a country chapter or whether it's District 7030, I think one of the things we can endeavor to do during this Rotary year is develop a disaster recovery or disaster preparedness mental health toolkit
There you go. That could be replicable
that
globally.
can be
Ooh,
replicable
that
globally.
would be a great idea.
Yeah. All right, my job's
Yes.
done. Thanks,
All
guys.
right.
All
Oh,
right.
yeah, right. No.
And we're right on time to end at 7:59. So to close us off, thank you so, so much, both of you. As Sean had said before, Bonnie, you've been so generous with your time, both from when the original conceptualization of the country action groups to offering your support to anybody who needs your advice, who needs some guidance. And thank you so much for taking time out of your schedule to be here with us tonight. We so appreciate you.
You're
And
welcome.
Sean, you were so thorough, so detailed in terms of the steps that you went through for the Country Action Group in Trinidad. And I'm hoping that everybody who's here tonight feels much more equipped, much more empowered and inspired to follow in the CAGMHITT's footsteps so that we can have country action groups across all of our member states in District 7030. In closing, I just want to encourage everybody who's been maybe thinking about wanting to participate more in mental health advocacy to seriously consider, your clubs starting and being part of a country action group and joining the call to break stigma, to end stigma, to increase awareness, and to increase access and capacity. And I truly believe that with the power of the Rotary Club and our communities, because that's what our Rotary Action Groups let us do, that we can achieve so much more together. All right. With that, thank you so much, everybody, for coming out. Be safe and have a good rest of your night.